Okay, a heartfelt welcome to everyone to another Policy Forward offering here at the Brown School and meet and greet on the Master of Social Policy program. I'm Dan Ferris. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Assistant Dean for Policy Initiatives at the Brown School and Assistant Professor of Practice, and I lead training and education initiatives at the Social Policy Institute, which is a university-wide institute at WashU as well. I'm joined here by some very, very special guests today, who I'm so excited to hear from throughout the session. So this is the second of two offerings that we've had over the last week or so, really building community and creating spaces for students to learn about and engage with policy opportunities at the Brown School and the MSP program. And so for these policy forward discussions, I'm truly grateful to the admissions office at the Brown School, our faculty colleagues, as well as MSP current students and alum as pictured here in front of us. So today we're joined by Jenna Hampton, Michelle Mandeville, and Sarah Moreland Russell, who I'll invite to introduce themselves in just a minute. So as you're here, we are joined today by current Brown School students, including our amazing MSP graduate assistant, who's an MSW MSP student himself, Nicholas Asher. Welcome, Nicholas. It's great to see you. And so as we will talk about throughout the session and interweave throughout, the real foundations of the Brown School is long-standing leadership in social work, public health, and social policy. And so when we think about advancing policy at the Brown School, we think about the curriculum, career opportunities and internships, a really diverse faculty who apply policy in their everyday work and into their overarching career. And then, of course, over 15 research centers and institutes based at the Brown School specifically that are committed to advancing new knowledge and policy and social impact and change. So really briefly, not making any assumptions about how familiar folks are with social policy or social policy at the Brown School. So why social policy and in comparison to kind of other presentations or work in the field? So at the Brown School, we use frameworks and lenses grounded in social work and public health to build on a public policy field with historical roots in political science, economics, public administration. But really critically here, social policy focuses on translating ideas from across disciplines into sustainable real-world solutions for real-world problems. So social policy practitioners and researchers alike aim to develop and promote policy that's grounded in equity and addressing human needs across the lifespan, as bolded here to achieve an inclusive society that is socially, racially, and economically just. So now that we're all on the same page and speaking some of the same language, let's have just a moment just to talk about what's new in policy. And while it's really great to create some space and to be thinking about what's happening within the Brown School, we're really interested always to be connecting outside the school. So in the recent weeks, the UN General Assembly convened global leaders with the priority issues of climate change and global security. Just last week, the US House and Senate passed a temporary spending bill to avoid a government shutdown, which would have been really detrimental to services and programs around the country. The Biden administration convened a White House conference on hunger at the last week, at which they announced a plan to end hunger in the United States by 2030. And right here in Missouri, advocates are filing different lawsuits to overturn a law recently passed that criminalizes the unhoused utilizing state-owned property. Notably, especially as we're here with some of our faculty and students who have done incredible things at the school in terms of their coursework, their internships, and now in real-world policy settings, the lawsuits are less about the substance of the law and more about the legislative mechanisms that were used to advance it. So I'll actually invite our special guests, Jenna, Michelle, and Sarah Moreland Russell into the space at this point to introduce themselves, if you'd like, and also if there's something new in policy on your end or something that's happening in your neck of the woods, as they say. So why don't we go ahead and start with Jenna?
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Hampton. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently a legislative affairs analyst at NARO, which is the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials. It's a association for professionals that work in the housing field, mostly public housing authorities. So just for example, one of our members is the St. Louis Housing Authority, and we have members all across the nation. A recent policy issue, I think it's interesting you mentioned the Missouri, the lawsuit, because there's other states there that are experiencing a similar situation right now. So a couple of our members have brought that to our attention. We mostly focus on federal law, but there's always some overlap with what the states and federal governments are working on. So our members do try and keep us apprised of what's happening at the state level too. So we have heard from our Missouri members about that law and some other members. So they're strategizing together on maybe how to combat those kind of laws in the future at the state level.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Jenna. We could spend an entire session on any one of these bullet points, to be sure. One other note on the Missouri law is that the text of the legislation that moved forward, that it's the ground for the lawsuit, was copy and pasted from what other states have done in more than common practices we've learned and seen in recent years. So speaking of government though, and government at the state level, I'd love to invite Michelle Mandeville into the space to introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Michelle Mandeville. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Constituent Services here in the Governor and Lieutenant Governor's office in Minnesota. So our governor is Tim Walz and our Lieutenant Governor is Peggy Flanagan. Just some of our day-to-day activities. My team is the team that manages all the correspondence that comes into our office, whether it's people agreeing or disagreeing to Biden's hunger plan or things happening at a very local level. They reach out to our office, and sometimes we don't always have the jurisdiction to cover it, but we do the best we can to respond to people who really do need assistance from our office or just have some recommendations to leave with us. Some policy that we have in our office is we have quite a few bills coming out. We are the executive branch who signed the bills after it's been processed by the legislative side of it. But we are currently, our policy advisors are currently in the process of the final budget for a 2023 legislative session, and in Minnesota, ours starts in early January.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that, Michelle. And last but certainly not least, my friend and colleague, Associate Professor of Practice, Sarah Moreland Russell.
Hi, everyone. As Dan said, so I'm Sarah Moreland Russell. I'm Associate Professor of Practice here at Washington University in the Brown School. I teach a number of classes, all related to policy. And I love the fact that, Dan, you brought these, that this is one of your first slides for discussion or as a framing for social policy, because number one, you know, this is across multiple areas of interest in policy. So it gives you, is sort of indicative of social policy broadly. But also in all of my classes, the first topic of conversation is what's in the news, because it's so important to track sort of what is on the policy agenda today, and how that either changes next week or the next year or whatever it might be. It's really important, especially now as we enter into midterms. So great job, Dan, in starting the conversation that way.
Thanks as always, Sarah, for the vote of confidence. And I get to learn from the best, clearly in the work I do, as Sarah and I get to co-teach at least one class together on a relatively regular basis, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we move forward. So, we'll hold. I see, you know, people are continuing to stream in. We're really excited to hear from you as well. But just in the interest of time, we will invite folks who are here as guests and attendees to introduce themselves when we get to Q&A and discussion just a little bit along the way. But feel free to put questions in the chat as we go, and we can come back to those as we move towards the end. So again, so I think all three of our speakers and guests have done a really great job in framing in their current work, whether that's in legislative affairs or a governor's office or in policy research and policy teaching, about why policy. And so it's clearly an incredible and critical time to be building advanced skills, knowledge, and networks in policy. And so whether for advocacy and activism, analysis and research, or administration and leadership, we've built and designed a Master of Social Policy program to equip the next generation of policy leaders with what's truly needed to make an impact. So I'll just do a brief overview of what is contained in the program. I'll invite Michelle, Sarah, and Jenna to chime in along the way from their own experiences with the program, and then we will get to Q&A and discussion just as quickly as we can. So the MSP is 31 new credits completed during 1 year of study at the Brown School. It consists of 5 foundation courses, 3 electives, a full-time internship that the program culminates in, and then short intensive courses that the program kicks off with, both for some skill, knowledge, and networking with your cohort, to be sure. So when we think about the program model itself, it is the exact same regardless of what your pathway into the program might be. So we have a number of students who do the program as a dual degree with the Master of Social Work or Master of Public Health programs at the Brown School. We have a JD MSP joint degree with one of our peer colleges or schools at Washington University in St. Louis. The foundation of the program, and still one of the most exciting parts of it, is its partnership with global partner universities. Some of the top universities, particularly in China and Israel, have student exchange where students from diverse fields in urban planning and sociology, social work, and public health, of course, spend 1 year at the Brown School in residence in addition to their program where they're coming from. And last but certainly not least, for interested students who have previous graduate work completed and have been in the field for a little more time, we have a paired degree opportunity. Again, the degree itself is designed to be flexible and student-centered in a way that you can design it to really meet your needs and where you're entering from and where you're hoping to leave from. So those foundation courses, of course, policy analysis, of course, politics, of course, statistics and economics, and of course, management. So when we think about these 5 foundations, whether a public policy or a social policy lens, when you look at top policy programs across the country, these will be shared foundations of any competitive program. So when we're thinking about and looking at the, just a little background noise. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So when we look at these foundations, we recognize that students are going to be utilizing the degree to advance a wide range of career opportunities and pathways. And so it's an opportunity to become more conversant and more proficient across these really critical and foundational skills. For students who are doing a dual degree and are sequencing, you work closely with an academic advisor and your faculty to identify which of some of these shared classes make the most sense to front load in your social work or public health program, which to take your MSP year, and how that comes into how that really comes into advancing what you're able to do at the school, and then of course beyond. I'll invite Sarah in at this point also. As a couple of these classes, I know she had not only a hand but really led the design and implementation of, no pun intended. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about impact assessment and influencing policy implementation?
Sure, absolutely, Dan, thanks. So I'll start actually with influencing policy implementation. Really, this class considers the various influences on policy, on the policy process, all the way from, definition of the problem to be addressed, all the way to the implementation of a policy. The idea of this course actually was born before the MSP program and then was sort of adopted into the MSP program because we were studying so much about sort of policy topics in general, but we weren't really taking a dive into sort of that the various pieces influencing policy. And so this class really dives into that, anywhere from media to stakeholder to the use of science, and really examines those influences and how they help or hinder policy. So that was one of my favorite classes to teach and still is, as we've sort of changed it over the course of time a little bit. For the policy impact assessment, this course was developed out of health impact assessment, which is sort of a specialized tool used in public health, but we've applied it more broadly here to social policy. And the difference in this class compared to some of the other analysis class is that it's really policy impact assessment is really a progressive or prospective view of policy and sort of the potential for positive or negative influences as a result for policy. So it's really a tool used in policy planning before it's implemented, rather than that sort of retrospective analysis that sometimes happens after a policy is implemented and it needs changed. So this sort of tool has been used broadly internationally, more so than the United States, even though the United States is using it a lot more in certain areas to really develop policy and inform policy on the front end and develop it more appropriately and without sort of those unintended consequences from the front end. So those are the two classes that I teach and really love working in the MSP program with.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your contributions to the MSP program, both as a faculty member, as one of our program committee members, and an absolute leader and champion for social policy across the three fields. I'll also just pause and invite either Michelle or Jenna if you wanted to offer a reflection or an insight from your course experience, either to the two that Sarah was highlighting or any of the other classes that are here, in terms of how you think about and connect to what you did at the Brown School and now what you're doing in your professional policy practice.
Michelle, you can go first if you want.
Well, I will say that the statistics class, I'm definitely using that a lot more than I thought I would be. There's the, so like I said earlier, we have a lot of the correspondence coming into our office, and that type of correspondence is really easy to qualify. Like we can easily just copy and paste someone's email and say, this is what people are calling in about. But at the same time, we have such a heavy volume where we sometimes just need to make it a little more condensed. And so just being able to quantify then the type of information that we get into our office, what people are calling about, what are some of the top issues that people of Minnesota would like to hear more from us about. And so that really helps our office guide some of our press conferences, our messaging, where the events the governor might attend, et cetera. So the statistics class was something that I really value now.
Yeah, and I'll say I took both of Sarah's classes and I highly recommend them. They were great. She definitely gave us flexibility to delve into policy topics we were interested in. So that really allowed me the time to study more about affordable housing and build up some knowledge that I still use in my career. I also have my final project for the health impact assessment class on my LinkedIn still as like a sample document. So that was a really useful project. And then the other thing is economics sometimes might seem scary to social workers or public health students, but it's a really useful course as well, especially if you want to get into the policy field. There's a lot of economic arguments that come out. I have to be able to convince members of Congress and their staff that investing in housing is good for the economy and will help with inflation and everything else we talk about as along the lines of economics. So just having at least a foundation and a background in that is really helpful as well.
Thanks again to all three of you. Those were great reflections and applications and helping to bring to life a very text-heavy slide. So I really, really appreciate that. So in addition to the foundation coursework, the MSP students complete 9 elective credits. We've grouped these and identified over 40 classes at the Brown School itself, which are particularly aligned with and relevant to policy. MSP students also have the opportunity to take any class at the Brown School towards their electives and have also taken classes at the law school, other schools around WashU, as well as from St. Louis University and UMSL. So lots of different opportunities. And again, those decisions and the idea behind that is to really embrace and allow students as much flexibility as possible to make the MSP their own. So we kick off the program with short courses, typically over the summer. Since the very beginning, we've done a summer institute with a global partner university. This last year, we led social entrepreneurship policy in Asia and comparative education policy. I believe an article just went live on the WashU website about our summer institute. I will make sure to put that in the chat before we wrap up so folks can take a closer look. But of course, courses in the short courses have ranged from program and policy development using a gender equity lens children and family policy, understanding U.S. social welfare policy through the lens of the fantastic Farm Bill, and on and on and on. So these are designed and intended to create community and shared understanding of key critical policy areas. These are unique to the MSP program. They're developed each year by leading faculty and policy practitioners in the field. And as we look at what's being offered this semester in St. Louis, a really good range of everything from folks who are interested in data science for social impact, HIV policy and advocacy as a tool, environmental justice and community collaboration and policy and data is actually taking place right now, not in this moment, but over these couple of weeks in early October, and is being led by Amin-Ra Mashariki, formerly of the Obama administration and the New York City Chief Data and Technology Officer for many years. Now he's with the Bezos Earth Fund and very, very kindly lending his expertise to the short courses. And then Ian Forber-Pratt teaches a very popular class in authentic advocacy and really bringing students together around how we apply what we do and what we learn into real world policy settings. All this culminates in an impactful full-time summer internship where students implement their classroom learning in real world settings. They're building their networks, they're developing leadership and management skills through practice, and have internship opportunities at a wide range of locations and settings. So what policy internships look like and what policy career pathways look like are very much one and the same. So our students go to think tanks and research institutes, work locally and nationally and globally with advocacy and community nonprofits. And then, of course, elected offices and government agencies working in and with those settings, whether it's with an internship on Capitol Hill or in Jefferson City, the state capital of Missouri, or working for an organization like Jenna does now, where your responsibility is legislative affairs between community partners and organizations and the legislative bodies. So to show as well as tell about the MSP internship, just a kind of smattering of where some of our previous students have done their work, just to demonstrate again, regardless of what pathway students are joining the program from, there are incredible opportunities for them to take advantage of. So again, we've had students in think tanks and research institutes, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, congressional coalitions, Congress itself, research institutes and centers right on the WashU campus and beyond. So with that, I'd actually like to again invite Jenna and or Michelle maybe to talk a little bit about their internship and how it applied to or springboarded, if that's the word I can use, into what you are doing now in your professional policy work.
Sure, I can go. While I was at the Brown School, I was an MSP, MSW dual degree student. I actually did 6 different internships just because I wanted to experience a lot of different things. But the MSP, I did all 3 of my summer MSP internship credits with NARO, with my current employer. So I actually was hoping to go to DC for an internship experience. So I was applying to all housing related DC internships. But of course, that was summer 2020, ended up being remote, and I worked for them remotely, but it was still a really good experience. And they actually, because it was remote, I was able to stay on through the fall for my last semester at the Brown School, and then they hired me full time. And so I guess one thing about, oh, I think there's some background. I think one thing about the MSP internship that I appreciate is for some students, I think it falls at the end of their time at the Brown School or close to the end. And so you really can leverage that into a full-time position if that works out with the employer and with your interest. And so I really appreciated that, and obviously now have a job in DC and was able to make it up here after the pandemic. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I like the way it's structured within the program.
And that's one thing I'll really echo about what Jenna said, is just how it translates into a full-time job. And so what I had done with my internships was, like Jenna said, it was at the end of my, I was also MSP, MSW. So I had asked some of the people, like, what opportunities would this translate into, whether it's in this department or a separate department. And so while I did my full-time internship with the Center on Gender, Migration, and Human Rights, I also actually did another internship just to pass some time with the governor's office here in the exact department that I work in. So this was able to translate into another full-time job opportunity, and I've been able to work my way up into the position that I'm in now. So just really echoing what Jenna said about seeing how you can leverage that opportunity to be some type of full-time employment afterwards.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for sharing a little bit about your own experiences and then really translating that into how the internship fits between coursework, your studies, and then of course, what you're doing professionally. So of course, there's the MSP program, and then many, if not most, of our MSP students take advantage of robust policy opportunities at the Brown School beyond their internship, beyond their coursework. So there's a Washington, D.C. course. Students have access to memberships with a National Association of Public Policy, as the Brown School is an institutional member. They've received fellowships. They've gone to the fall research conference virtually or otherwise. I believe Jenna herself has been really involved. Sorry, a little bit of background noise. Jenna's been really involved, or was really involved as a student member, and hosted Let's Get a Coffee podcast with national leaders in housing. Had a chance to network and connect on that front. And then the Graduate Policy Scholars Program is a one-year completely extracurricular program for students across WashU to build connection and community around policy. So the DC course, in brief, gives students an incredible opportunity to get to know the policy process and inner workings of Congress. There are meet and greets with Missouri senators. Students form teams. They develop a policy brief. They go onto Capitol Hill. They meet with national experts and advocacy groups to test their messages and their framing and their staff and their data. And then they meet with legislators and their staff, and they advocate or lobby and know the difference. And really push for the issues that they're passionate about, whether that's from a social work, a public health, social policy lens, or otherwise. And this is not a drill. It's a really exciting opportunity for real world policy practice. And we've had legislative offices even sign on to co-sponsor legislation after meeting with student groups. Again, the Graduate Policy Scholars Program, students learn, they engage, they create, and it's a great chance to get to know a community of classmates both at the Brown School and at Washington University more broadly. There are a few trainings that are held in the fall on kind of basics and foundations of policy practice, and then students are responsible for creating different products and then showcasing that at the end of the academic year. A number of students take part in local and state practicum or internships during their time at the Brown School. So typically in the spring, which is when the legislative session is, both in the city and state, students are hosted by legislative offices. It's not too long of a drive to Jefferson City, so a number of our students will wake up early on a Tuesday morning and caravan or carpool and spend the day shadowing and really experiencing firsthand the inner workings of the state capitol. And then we've also had students with the Board of Aldermen and Treasurer's Office, the Mayor's Office, as well as the St. Louis County Executive's Office here in St. Louis. As I was getting to catch up with Jenna and Michelle just a little bit before we went live, I fondly remember their participation and their great leadership as students, joining us for a lot of the programming that was offered and happening at the time around bringing in national experts and faculty experts for monthly kind of meet and greets and lunchtime lectures and seminars around a wide range of different policy topics. So again, as a one-year program, we're really committed to building connections for students with each other, as well as the experts at the Brown School and WashU and our policy partners beyond. So what all this leads to, our alumni are doing incredible things. They're advancing social policy in a wide range of fields, creating new knowledge and evidence, and continuing on their academic pursuits through top PhD programs, and leading policy and programs locally, nationally, and globally with a wide range of organizations. So some very recent career data that we were able to compile in partnership with a few of our Brown School colleagues just really shows the incredible diversity of where our MSP alum wind up. Obviously, a significant amount in higher education and the social sector and government and nonprofit, but a wide range of folks working in different fields, both traditionally and non-traditionally for policy. So it just goes to show that I think there's incredible interest and incredible demand for the skills and the knowledge and the networks that students and recent alum are generating through a policy program. Some of those PhD programs that students have moved into are representative of top universities, of course, around the world, right here in St. Louis, of course, at WashU and FLU, St. Louis University, a number of top Chinese universities, the Imperial College of London, USC, and then UCLA as well. So a number of students utilize the SP program to go immediately into their professional policy pursuits. For others, it really is a stepping stone. I'll use the word springboard again, into further doctoral level policy research and study. And just a snapshot of some of the incredible organizations and places where our students are currently working. Again, this ranges from large multinational companies to local organizations and community-based groups, to research institutes that are university-based and beyond. So again, we are hoping that this session and this information was helpful to help you see yourself in the MSP program. And for us as the MSP program, we're just so energized by the interest and the excitement from the folks who are attending today and are engaging with us outside of these info sessions to really to fully explore the Brown School and the MSP program and how it might be a good fit for your academic and professional pursuits. Before we move over to discussion, I was going to invite my colleague, Sarah Birch from our admissions office at the Brown School, just to say a couple of words about the application and application process.
And thanks, Dan. So as Dan said, I'm Sarah Birch, she, her pronouns, and I am the Office of Admissions and Recruitment, and here to just support all things around the application process. As stated in the slide, we definitely encourage folks to apply early. Our first deadline for the fall 23 application period is December 1st. And so start now and ask as many questions as you have about that application. What we're really looking for, in addition to all things that are listed here, is for you to tell us your why policy and why the MSP program feels like a good fit for you and your goals. If you can, connect experiences that you've had to work that you hope to do in the policy sector, that's incredible. Of course, policy experience is not required, but it's great to see that you can make those connections in the work you're doing now or work you've done in the past. You'll see at the bottom there is a video interview component as a requirement of the application. And that's one of my favorite components. It allows you to go in and really share more off paper of who you are, why you're pursuing the program, and give us a little more insight into what you want to do. So like I said, if you have questions at all, feel free to reach out to myself directly. I know Dan is also always happy to answer questions about the application, and I'll also drop the Brown School Admissions Office email in the chat so you can reach out to us there too.
Great, thank you so very much, Sarah and the admissions team, for your great support of students along their trajectory of exploring the Brown School. And so with that, we can just offer a very humble thank you. I'll leave this up for just a little bit, and then I'll just copy my email into the chat so we can have a proper discussion, not with the screen share and the small boxes. I'll actually stop the recording at this point as well, as we've got the presentation down, and just open up the floor for folks to share again about their why for policy. We'd love to hear from you all and hear what questions you have for myself, for admissions, from our incredible alumni, from our current student, Nicholas, as well. So thank you again so much for being here, and looking forward to the discussion.